Hey everyone, I thought it would be fun to make kind of must-have beginners video for starting out with watercolor. I know this is quite kind of an intimidating task to approach when you're starting out with watercolors and there are so many supplies. The thing is that you won't know what you like until you start painting and paint for, I'm gonna say, years to get really kind of clear on your preferences. And even then, you know, there are different things that come out and your preferences will change maybe. So it's very hard to recommend the perfect products for every person because it varies so much depending on your skill level, your budget, your preferences, your style of painting, and all these things. But I want to try and simplify things for you and give you some good pointers, hopefully, kind of point you in the right direction. I get a lot of questions on I'm starting out, or I want to upgrade to artist grade watercolors, which set should I get? And a blanket statement would be you have to check your local or, you know, your online retailer, because I'm in Europe and what is available to me and is a good deal for me is not necessarily the same if you're in the US or if you're in Asia. So you really have to check the prices, and I would recommend also to try and buy something that is local to you so that you can save money, support, you know, local manufacturers, and you know, usually pay less for shipping because it's not like international shipping, at least within your continent, hopefully. So keep all those things in mind, and I really hope this video will be helpful to you. I would love to hear more tips in the comments. I'm sure people will find them helpful. I'm going to focus on the three main elements of painting with watercolors. Of course, there are endless amounts of related products, like things like, you know, sketching with pencil, yes, no, masking fluid, clips to hold your paper, all those things, but I can't cover everything. And I think the basic, if you have these three things, paint, brushes, paper, you can start painting with watercolors. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with paint, move on to brushes, and then end with paper. The two most popular, most common forms of watercolor, and there are others, are pans that look like this. These are half pans, and then you have tubes that look like this. There are also full pans, which look like this. So they're about twice the size of a half pan. And tubes come in various sizes from 5 milliliters, 10 milliliters, 20 milliliters, depending on the brand. Some brands offer two sizes of tubes. In general, tubes are more economical, so you pay less dollars per milliliter, but they contain usually more paint than a pan, so they will cost you an absolute number of dollars more than a pan. So let's say if you have a budget of $20 this month to spend, you could probably get several, not probably, you could get several half pans depending on the price, and you can probably get only like a couple of tubes, or even maybe just one tube of a more expensive pigment with that price. So keep that in mind. Now, there are endless amounts of sets out there. I recommend checking brands' introductory set, because for the most part they would have a good selection of colors that are very varied. That means usually there is a good selection of primary colors, 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues, and you can mix many other colors just with those primaries, and usually a few earth tones. and that is a great place to start. I like to have more options, so I would say that for me, from my experience, the way I have painted over the years, a set of 24 half pans in a metal tin is my kind of sweet spot, considering everything. It's not perfect, but it has a lot of advantages. The metal tin, the advantage of a metal tin is that you can mix and match different brands in one tin. So let's say you started with, I don't know, brand X, and you finished a pan, or you don't like certain colors and you want to try something new, you can just grab a few half pans or full pans from another brand, stick them in there and just go. If you buy a plastic set, a set that comes in a plastic box, many times those will fit only the pans from that brand, and that has been my experience, and that kind of limits you. Now, if you're the kind of person that you know yourself and you know that you will buy one set and you will use it for 10 years, I know there are people like that, then you don't really have to take this under consideration. But if you are like me and you always want to try new things, the plastic boxes are very, very limiting. They usually cost less. So if you're on a budget, you still might want to consider that to start with. One example that I can think of from the top of my head is the Van Gogh 15 half pan set is in a cute plastic box. Really, really nice quality paint for the price. It's a great set to start with, and it will cost you, I think, under $20, at least here in Europe. But yeah, you're kind of limited with the pans unless you run out of the paint, and then you can just buy a tube and refill those pans. But if you have the budget, and you can now find empty tins on Amazon, so you could just get an empty tin and fill it out with whatever paint you want. I really like the 24 half pans size. You can also fit a combination of half pans and full pans. That's another nice variety that you get with the metal tins. So this is a good size for me. I don't like the bigger tins, and if you are on a tight budget or you have a very, very small space, you can get the smaller tins. Ignore the brands. This is a box you can't find anymore, but you can find really colorful tins on Amazon, I think, and AliExpress also has some pretty colors. And I know that White Nights also now offer a really, really pretty purple tin. So you can find some pretty ones, but not this particular one. This one is a Paul Rubens one that comes with paint, but it's just an example. These are very, very standard boxes, as you can see. So as I said, if your space is very, very tight, or you think you will be traveling a lot or sketching outside, you might want to consider getting a small tin. If you know color theory, you can absolutely have a very limited palette and mix a ton of colors. Now, the nice thing about these smaller tins is you can see you can also fit another row of paints in the middle. So it's not just 12 half pans, you can fit usually like 17 or something like that, or 18. And also you can take these inserts out. I know a lot of people do that. Mine is very stuck. You can take it out and stick even more pans here and just not use this insert that comes with all these tins. So that's another option. That's why I like these. Now, a palette that came recently into my world is this one. I got it on Amazon. I think now they ran out of those, but you can still find it on a shop on AliExpress. I will link everything below with some more details, so don't worry if you miss something. So this is a palette I recently found, and I think it would be great for a beginner because you can use also tube paint to squeeze it here if you find a good set of tube paints. Daniel Smith offer really nice introductory sets. Core offers really nice introductory set in tubes. Also, you know, Holbein, Sennelier, M. Graham, I think they all have really nice sets of tubes and they are more economical. So this palette will kind of allow you to have the best of both worlds. You have the place here for the pans and the place to squeeze paint out. I think it's really nice. The only thing, first of all, it's plastic, which I do prefer metal. And it's, you can see, more bulky. It's bigger, so for traveling might not be the best of option. It's also heavier. But for a studio palette, if you're starting out, or if you like to mix things around, or you think you'll be, you know, growing your collection as you go and trying different things, I think it's a great option. Now, I do want to give an honorable mention to porcelain. Porcelain is, I think, really the gold standard, the best of the best to a material for a palette. This is my studio palette. This is what I usually use when I do my more serious just watercolor paintings. This is not, I would say, a super expensive palette for what it is. I got mine at Jackson's, and there's another variation with another row here that looks like this, so you could fit even more colors. Probably should have gotten that one, but I was trying to, you know, limit myself. There is something about mixing color on porcelain that is a different experience, in my opinion. Please comment below. I know a lot of you agree with me. Of course, the problem is that these are really, really heavy, and you can see I have like some half pans. You can't switch out colors here so easily. So it works really well if you have kind of your go-to colors. I usually just squeeze, you know, I have here an area for my yellows, an area for my reds, and then I can squeeze different paints. I think this is beautiful to have. There are also smaller dishes of porcelain, so you can test that out, or even, you know, just grab a nice white plate. I just wanted to mention it because it is a beautiful material, I would say, to work on. So I want you to know about this. I have to say, I think it's a bit, maybe just definitely a palette like this can be overwhelming if you're starting out, but if you feel comfortable like jumping in and investing in something that will last you a lifetime, you should really consider going, and you have the space and you think you'll paint mostly, you know, in your a designated area. I can't not mention such a thing because it's just such a beautiful quality piece to have. And again, you can find smaller dishes and try them out, but I really feel like you have to be kind of comfortable with setting up a palette and everything and painting to have one of these. So maybe not like your very first palette, but if you see that you're painting in watercolors, that you're really, really loving it, and that you're very serious about it, then I would say like the next step after this kind of palette or this would be a beautiful porcelain palette. I just wanted to mention this. I don't want to give specific paint recommendations. I have a lot of videos about my personal favorites, but I really think that you should shop around for a good introductory set, and yeah, and find a good deal that works for you. I would say 12 is a good number to start with. 6 is kind of a must, a set of 6 that has 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds or pinks gives you a lot of options. Usually the 12th set will add some earth tones to it. If you can find a set without white, I think that's better. Usually the white in these sets is useless from my experience. A lot of artists use white gouache in their paintings. I also do that for those highlights at the end, but gouache is a lot more opaque, and usually the white paint that comes in the sets is not as opaque and is kind of worthless. I usually toss mine out when I have it. That's my personal experience. So 12 sets will give you a really good selection, and the 24 will have, you know, even more paints to choose from. For me, I really enjoy having a selection of colors, especially because I really enjoy secondary and tertiary colors that usually don't come in the smaller sets. So all the violets, the turquoises, the those kind of colors are the ones that I really love, and they are never part of the really, really small set. That's it. Lily wanted me to tell you that she picked some flowers in the garden.
Can
Good, let's move on. Let's move on to brushes. Now, this is really hard, and I think it's probably the least helpful recommendation I can make, because it really comes down to personal preference. There are artists that paint with mostly flat brushes, and there are artists that paint with mostly round brushes. A few things to keep in mind when you're shopping for brushes is that sizes are not standardized, is that a word? Are not a standard. So for example, this is a number 8, and then this is a number 14. These are different manufacturers, different lines. So what does that mean? You can see nothing. Make sure you read the dimensions in the description of the brush. I can tell you what I think you should avoid. I think sets, cheap sets like the ones that you find, you know, on Amazon or something, that you have 10 brushes that are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I think those are a waste of money. You want to have a smaller brush for details, and that can be somewhere between 0 to 8, again, depending on the brand. And then a larger one for larger brush strokes or washes or whatever. So where to start? That's a really, really good question, and I don't even know if there's a really good answer. If you're taking online classes, you can try and see what your instructor is using. I think most artists at the end of the day use a very small amount of brushes for, you know, 90% of their work, but everyone has different preferences. What I do recommend is going for synthetic hair. It's cheaper, and you can be sure that you're not paying for animal cruelty, so that's a bonus in my opinion. And if you take good care of your brushes, they will last you a long time. Nowadays, there are really, really great imitations for animal hair. Now, if you do kind of more loose type of watercolor, that is very popular these days, and I'm happy that it is. Usually you will see that the squirrel hair, like sable, Kolinsky sable, those are kind of the gold standard of softer brushes. But nowadays there are some really, really good synthetic substitutes, and that are really, really soft and perform, you know, just as well or very close to real hair. I also suggest checking your retailer's own brand. These shops don't open a brush manufacturer, like a brush factory. They have other leading brush makers make their brushes and put their name on it. So I tried several of Jackson's, where I buy most of my art supplies, their own brushes, and they are lovely, and they are really, really affordable. So these are from the Raven range, and I love them. I think they're a great deal, great value. So those are worth a try. And now, if you think that you will be painting a lot on the go, outside, sketching, urban sketching, that kind of thing, then you might want to consider investing in a travel brush. These tend to be more expensive than regular brushes. This one is an Escoda one from one of their sets. This is by Joseph Z, one of his sets. And they're lovely, they're beautiful, and you can travel with them without worrying about damaging the bristles. And you can also paint with them in their studio. I find that they're really nice. They have like a nice weight to them, and they're really nice also to just paint, you know, keep them like this in your brush holder and use them like that. So you might want to look into travel brushes. I would say start with a couple, look for a good deal, check, as I said, like house brands, and, you know, once in a while try a different shape. There are these kind of more specialty brushes that are really, really helpful for, I don't know, for example, like grass. This brush can make your life real easy. Or these kind of larger flat brushes are really nice for large washes. I don't usually paint like that, so I can't say that I've gotten a lot of use out of this, but it's definitely nice to cover. If you're working wet in wet, then having one of these is really, really nice for wetting your paper fast. You don't want to do this like with this brush. It'll take you forever, and it'll start to dry by the time you know, wet the other side of the paper. So yeah, brushes, I would say, are tricky. You really have to kind of try and see what you like. I think also the kind of bristles can vary. So these are the Perla range from Escoda, and when I started watercoloring, I used these all the time. I really, really enjoyed them, but now I prefer the softer bristles and this kind of like quill brushes. I rarely use flat brushes. Sometimes I try them and then they go back in the brush holder for, you know, till the next time. This is another brush from Escoda set, the Misled set. It's beautiful. I don't know, I should try it. You know, it's always nice to mix things up, but I haven't used it a lot. So this is a dagger brush. I love it. I use it all the time. I was really on a hunt for a good synthetic sword dagger brush. They are very, very hard to find a good one. And this was recommended to me. This is the Pro Arte Art 9A sword. This is the small size. I have also the larger one. I use mostly the small. It looks kind of meh, but once you get it wet, it's beautiful. So yeah, just try. Don't buy a big set. Start with a couple of brushes, and yeah, maybe, you know, recommended by your teacher or whoever it is that you're following that paints in the style that you want to learn, and maybe start there. And if they're using real hair brushes, then check for a similar shape that is synthetic to save money. Last but not least is paper. And here I think a lot of people agree that, okay, I'll say it like that. Don't waste your money and your time on cheap paper. I know it's really, really tempting to buy this. I'll show you an example. Yeah, I got this on Amazon. You know, it had a lot of like recommendations, and it's watercolor pad, really, really cheap. It just, you know, maybe for sketching, yeah, you can use it, but the colors don't behave the same as they do on real or on like good artist quality paper, and you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment, in my opinion, especially if you're interested in that kind of loose style where the colors flow and blend. This will just, it won't work. It just won't work, believe me. I've tried many times. So you can try sketchbooks. I love working in sketchbooks. That's my preferred way of painting, or preferred format to work in. There are pads, which, you know, they're okay. And then there are blocks, which are like pads, only they have the kind of this gumi on all four sides, which is really nice because it kind of stays flat kind of as you paint on it. So it's a really nice option also to take with you if you're painting outside. What I don't like about these blocks is that you can't work on several paintings at the same time, which you also can't do this in any of these. So what I usually do is I work in several sketchbooks or several blocks or pads at any given time. You can of course buy loose sheets. I recommend watercolor paper that is 100% cotton, and the weight, well, most people would suggest that you don't go any lower than 300 grams per square meter, or GSM, and I tend to agree, unless you're like me and you really like to just sketch a lot. And then if you find good quality paper that is 100% cotton, I think you can go also on lower weights and still enjoy the experience. That's at least my own personal experience. I've made these little sketchbooks using much thinner paper, and I really enjoy the way that the paint behaves on it. It's just good quality paper. So probably not what I would choose for like a larger painting or like a proper painting, but if you just like to play around, yeah, I think it's an option worth exploring. Now, watercolor paper comes in 3 textures. There's hot press, that is smooth. There is rough, that is very textured, and there is cold press or not, that is somewhere in the middle. I really like rough paper, but again, you will have to paint and see what you like. If you do a lot of like detailed work, then you probably want the smoother paper. And I would suggest go to your local, go to where you shop for art supplies and look for sample packs. This is such a great way of trying different manufacturers and trying different even colors of paper. Some papers are whiter and others are more cream, so you might like one or the other, and different textures, and then different brands do different textures in different ways. So the way that Arch's rough paper looks is not the same as, I don't know, Canson or something like that. And then within the brand, they also have different kinds of papers. So I know that Jackson's offer these sample packs. I think they're a great place to start. If you like sketchbooks, the brand Stillman & Byrne that does really beautiful sketchbooks also has a sample pack, so you can try all of the different papers that are in their sketchbooks before you commit and buy a whole sketchbook of, you know, paper you might not like, which I've done. So believe me, everything I'm telling you, I did all the mistakes. So I'm trying to save your money so you won't make the same mistake as I did. Try the paper samples. Also, before you commit to like a large pad or block, you might want to consider just buying a single sheet of a certain paper. You can go to your art store. Usually if it's a serious art store, they can have like these larger sheets of really beautiful watercolor paper, and then they can cut it down for you to smaller sizes if the large sheet is intimidating to you. And you can try that before you commit to like a really expensive Arches block or something like that. So that would be my recommendation. I think you can probably get really, really good deals on paint, and then go for synthetic kind of house brand brushes, and try different papers before you find one you like, but stay within that 100% cotton paper, because that will make all the difference when you're learning different techniques in watercolor. So I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave them below. I do my best to answer everything if I can. My goal with all these kinds of videos is not to tell you, you should buy this, you should buy that. I just know that I bought a lot of things that were a waste, and I wish, probably I wouldn't have listened to all of the advice, because I want to try everything and I want to see what I think about it. But a lot of these tips that I gave today, I definitely could have used before I had this huge collection of materials, and I hope they will help you. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye.